Last year's in Jamalpur. The devotee will not only sing spiritual songs and chant, those spiritual aspirants who move speedily on the path of evolution toward the supreme consciousness can never be blind to the sufferings of countless people around them due to the lack of a solid social system, solid economic system, and human feeling. If anyone is blind to the ill management of the social system, they have not been able to understand the supreme consciousness fully. Hence, the devotee must be ready to serve humanity. The spiritual aspirants who do not render social service do not have real devotion. In their devotion lies selfishness. Devotees who are selfish do not attain God. Devotees are workers. They will never be afraid of work. They will do maximum work. 1965 was a busy year for Baba. The organization was growing rapidly, and his DMC tours provided much of the impetus for that growth. Wherever he went, people thronged to see him. When he traveled by train, the platforms and stations along the way filled up with margis, eager to have the darshan of their guru. In many places, the PC lines were longer than Baba had time to attend to, and a selection process had to be introduced. Anandamarga was quickly gaining recognition as the fastest growing spiritual organization in India. The contrast between that and Baba's simple job as a section head in the Jamalpur accounts workshop led Shiva Shankar Mukherjee to ask Baba one day why he continued to remain there. Baba replied, "I am working in order to show people that one can lead a life of devotion and spiritual practice without giving up one's normal lifestyle." Periodically, Margis and whole-timers would request Baba to retire from his job, but he continued to tell them that it was not yet time. Nevertheless, the growing amount of time that Baba spent away from the office on leave gave every indication that that time was not far off. In February, Baba made the first of 2 trips that year to the northeastern states of Assam and Tripura, where several years earlier, Rasamai had begun the prachar efforts after borrowing money to travel there and create a presence for Anandamarga. On the morning of the Karimganj DMC, Baba expressed a desire to visit Rasamai's native village of Sadarasi. Though not a scheduled part of Baba's program, the local Margis made hasty arrangements and took Baba to the remote village for a surprise visit. It was not, however, quite the surprise they had imagined. When they arrived at the outskirts of the village, they found the local Margis and villagers lining both sides of the road to receive them. They found out afterward that one Margi from the village had dreamed the previous night that Baba would be arriving there around 8 in the morning. At dawn, he had begun going around the village, spreading the news that Baba would be arriving at that time. The Margis erected a shamiana, and the entire village turned out to hear Baba give a talk. Baba also paid a visit to the house of Rasamai's maternal uncle, the house in which Rasamai had been raised, thus fulfilling a secret desire of his faithful disciple. Though Rasamai was not physically present, it would remain one of the most cherished memories of his life. When the DMC program was over, several busloads of Margis accompanied Baba to the airport to see him off. When Baba passed through security, he was frisked by a local sub-inspector. There were no metal detectors in those days. After emptying Baba's pockets, the sub-inspector put Baba's keys back in his right pocket and his handkerchief in the left, precisely opposite to where Baba normally kept them. As Baba was leaving the security area, he checked his pockets. When he found that his things had been misplaced, he started scolding the sub-inspector. The superintendent of police, who was standing nearby, came over to see what was going on. "Look here," Baba said. "Your officer has disturbed the system that I have been following for more than 30 years. My keys go in my left pocket and my handkerchief in my right. He has displaced and misplaced them." The SP apologized and Baba smiled. The monks who were accompanying him did their best to suppress their laughter. Back in Jamalpur, the number of devotees visiting the Jagrati continued to increase. Many of these were young people who became inspired to dedicate their lives as whole-timers. Numbering in the hundreds, by the end of 1966, one of them was Lakshmi Prasad Nayak, who had his PC in early 1965 in the Jamalpur Jagrati. Recently initiated, he had heard many stories about Baba from the devotees. While he found them inspiring, he also felt uncomfortable with the unfeigned adulation he saw. Hence, when he entered Baba's room, he did not do Sastanga Pranam, both because he could not accept Baba as a god, as many devotees were fond of saying, and because he was wearing a brand new pair of pants and did not want to mess up the crease. Instead, he did namaskar, sat down in front of Baba's cot, and asked, "Baba, people are saying that you are a god, but how can that be? I think you are a guru." "Right you are," Baba replied. "But tell me, do you accept the existence of God?" "Yes, Baba." "Very good. Now I want you to admit all your sins and misdeeds, one by one." "I have committed some, it is true." No, tell me them, one by one." Lakshmi Prasad thought for a moment, trying to decide which one he should tell. Then he remembered the time in the 10th grade when he and two friends had been kicked out of school for stealing a carom board. In order to get reinstated, they had to admit in front of the entire school assembly that they had stolen it, and then beg everyone's pardon. "One time I stole something from school, Baba." "Be specific." Lakshmi Prasad was uncomfortable about revealing the details of what he still remembered as a shameful incident. Despite the fact that he had been the ringleader, he said, "But it wasn't really my fault. My two friends pushed me into it." "What are you saying?" "You stole the carom board. You misguided your friends and goaded them into helping you. I was not present, but Paramatma was watching everything. Don't try to hide from him. I don't want to have to ask you again. Tell me your crimes, one by one, in detail." Lakshmi Prasad's cheeks began to burn. He realized, to his extreme discomfort, that he could not hide anything from Baba. One by one, he recounted the details of whatever misdeeds he could remember, save one, a heinous crime that he had committed when he was 11, and which he had tried to hide ever since, even from himself. "There is one more crime that you have not admitted," Baba said, after the list had grown rather long. Lakshmi Prasad was too ashamed to continue. Finally, after a short silence, Baba started narrating the details of that incident. "Do you accept it?" he asked. Lakshmi Prasad broke down and started crying. Baba embraced him and said, "Human beings commit crimes. You have accepted it. That is your punishment. From this moment on, you will not think about it anymore, nor will you ever tell anyone. Rather, you will think that you have not committed this crime. Your life begins from today." Lakshmi Prasad embraced Baba with his head in Baba's lap and unburdened himself. He told Baba about his father's grinding poverty and the great struggle his family was facing. Baba assured him that he had nothing to worry about. Paramatma would take care of everything. "Do you remember when you were a child, you were riding in the back of a truck with some friends on the way to the market? You climbed up on top of the cab and turned around to tell your friends, Vaikunta and Shankar Saha, to climb up with you. Just as you leaned down to lend a hand to Vaikunta, the truck passed under the overhanging branches of a mango tree. One thick branch passed just over your head at that precise instant, not 2 feet above the cab. When you saw the branch after it went by, you realized that if you had not leaned over at that moment, you would have been killed. Do you remember?" "Yes, Baba," Lakshmi Prasad replied. reliving once again the trauma of that day. Painful images flooded back into his mind as Baba spoke the names of his childhood friends, long since forgotten. You were so afraid that day that you remembered God with great intensity and thanked Him for saving your life. Then you went home and cried to your mother, and she forbade you to ever ride on trucks again. Lakshmi Prasad clung to Baba even more tightly and continued to cry, the emotions pouring out of him like a river. You see, Baba said, Paramatma is always with you. He has been watching over you since your childhood. Rest assured, whatever is necessary to promote your welfare, Paramatma will take care of it. You shouldn't worry about it. Great persons do not worry about worldly matters. They trust in the will of Paramapurusha. Now tell me, to whom does your body belong? Your legs, your hands, your eyes? To Paramapurusha. Yes. And since they all belong to him, you won't hesitate to offer them to him, will you? No, Baba, I won't hesitate, I promise. Good. You have a great power sleeping within you. Use it for the service of Paramapurusha. Paramapurusha has given you your life. Use it to serve the creation. Lakshmi Prasad Nayak's PC lasted 45 minutes. When he came out of Baba's room, he went straight to Abhedananda, Baba's personal assistant, and told him that he wanted to become a whole-timer. Abhedananda told him that he would have to wait until he turned 18, still several months away. Otherwise, his parents could file a case against the organization. In the meantime, Baba arranged for Acharya Pashupati to sponsor his studies in Bhagalpur. Once he passed his 18th birthday and graduated from high school, he left for the training center in Varanasi. Another young disciple had his PC around the same time and had a very similar experience. Baba reminded him about a couple of childhood incidents in which he had almost died. He too had thanked God for saving his life. In contrast to Lakshmi Prasad, he asked Baba directly in PC whether or not he should become a monk. In reply, Baba said, Look, during your past several lifetimes, you have been quite happy. You've enjoyed a lot. You can endure some hardship for one lifetime for a great cause, can you not? The next day he caught a train from Jamalpur to Varanasi and entered the whole-timer training center. One evening that spring, Harinder was walking with Baba toward the tiger's grave. By now, he had graduated and taken a job with the government in the electricity office. As they were walking, Baba turned to him and said, Now you have also started taking bribes. Harinder was startled. But Baba, I don't remember ever taking any bribe ever. Baba smiled. The person who was able to resist a bribe of 200 rupees accepted 2 chum-chums, an Indian milk sweet, which is 4 annas, and a cup of tea, which is 2 annas. In total, 6 annas. Suddenly the scene flashed in Harinder's mind. The previous year, a businessman who owned a successful t-shirt factory had come to his office with an application for a 50-horsepower connection for a rice mill that he was constructing. The businessman had offered him a 200 rupee bribe to speed up the approval process, and Harinder had sent him away with a severe scolding for attempting to bribe a government official. Just 2 weeks before his field walk, Harinder was returning to work after his lunch break when he passed the same businessman standing in front of his newly opened mill. The man invited him inside to see the mill, and Harinder, remembering the scolding he had given him and feeling some sympathy for that reason, agreed to go inside and have a quick look at the setup. When he was leaving the factory, the man's mother offered him a couple of chum-chums and a cup of tea. Initially he refused, protesting that he had just finished his lunch, but the woman insisted, and finally Harinder relented. When he told Baba that he remembered the incident, Baba said, It was also a kind of bribe, Harinder. The sweets and the tea should have been given to some beggar, or to a leper struggling to pass the cold winter in the street. His mother addressed you as son, and practically forced the sweets on you. I know, but do you know what that businessman was thinking? In the meantime, he was thinking that this man did not accept my 200 rupee bribe, but he has taken some sweets from my mother. This will make him better disposed toward me in the future. I will always have some work or other with the electric office, and he may help me when I need him. Kiran and Kishan were the closest of friends, so much so that their friendship had become a topic of conversation among the other old-timers. Both had been initiated at the same time in Jammu. Both had decided to go to training at the same time, and when they finished training, they requested Baba to post them in the same place. Baba, as one might have expected, posted them in different areas, but whenever they returned to Jamalpur for reporting sessions, they would spend all their free time together. One day in General Darshan, Baba touched Dasarath on the back of his head and asked him to see Kiran and Kishan's past lives. Dasarath closed his eyes and concentrated for a few moments. Baba, I see 2 corpses on a pyre in a burning ghat on the banks of the river Padma in East Bengal. Whose bodies are they? They are the bodies of 2 handsome young men. And who were these young men? Baba, they were brothers. They died together. How did they die? They went to bathe in the river. One of them ventured out too far and got caught by the current. He began to drown. His brother attempted to save him, but he was also caught by the current, and both of them drowned. They were well loved in their community, and there was a great outpouring of grief when the news became known. Yes, Baba said. In that life they were born into a prosperous family of East Bengal. Due to their unfulfilled samskaras, the 2 of them have met again and become inseparable friends. Even though they have become old-timers, they still long for each other's affection, just as they did in their previous life, right up until their final breath. One day Acharya Sambudhananda, then posted in the northeast states, came to Jamalpur for reporting. While he was presenting his report to Baba, Baba inquired about the welfare of different margis and workers in his region. And how is Paresh in Guwahati doing? Baba asked. Baba, he is doing fine. Fine, you say. Don't you know that he has come down with malaria? Don't you know how serious his condition is? The local margis are not taking proper care of him, and he is blaming me mentally. He is complaining to me that even I don't look after him. Return immediately to Guwahati and make proper arrangements for his treatment. Tell the local margis there that Baba is displeased that they were indifferent to the health of their worker. As soon as you have done that, go straight to Karimganj. Don't waste even a single second. On your way to Karimganj, get down at Badarpur station. When you get down, you will see a train standing on the opposite platform, the Barak Valley Express. It will be going in the opposite direction. On that train you will find your initiate, Dr. Anukul Ray. You will take him off that train immediately and bring him along with you to Karimganj. Baba gave his instructions with such firmness that Sambudhananda did not dare ask any questions. He left immediately for the railway station and took the first train out that had connections for Guwahati. It was a long trip, nearly 2 days, and while he was traveling, he thought back to the day, nearly 3 years earlier, when he had first heard the name of Dr. Anukul Ray. On that day he had also been in Jamalpur for a reporting session. Baba had called him aside and said, Asim, when you go to Karimganj, there is a certain person there whom I want you to initiate. His name is Dr. Anukul Ray. He is a good man. He has been searching for a guru for a long time, but he hasn't yet found a suitable master. This is his address. Go to his house. He will have 4 questions, Answer these 4 questions to his satisfaction, and he will agree to take initiation. Now, note down the questions and the answers. Dr. Anukul had indeed been eager to find a Sadguru. Years earlier, he had visited a number of different masters in his search. The first of these was Ram Thakur, who told him that he could not initiate him because his guru was already decided. Ram Thakur also told him that his guru would be a very great master. Later, he went to visit Swami Svarupananda, from whom he also requested initiation, but only if he would answer 4 questions. The Swami, unhappy with his lack of humility, refused to initiate him. Finally, he went to the ashram of Anukul Thakur in Deoghar, another well-known guru. Anukul Thakur also declined to initiate him, but he told him that there was no need to keep searching. He would soon be initiated by a guru of the highest order. Anukul Thakur would not disclose that guru's name, but after repeated requests, he gave him a hint. He said his name would start with Shrii Shrii A. Dr. Ray returned home to Karimganj, disappointed, but hopeful that the guru he had long been waiting for would soon find him. But years passed, and still there was no sign of his guru. One morning, he was sitting at home in a contemplative mood when there was a knock at his door. He opened it to find a young man dressed in white. Without introducing himself, the young man asked him if he were Dr. Anukul Ray. When he answered yes, the youth said with an air of authority, "Please, take a quick bath and then come." "I don't understand," the doctor said, taken aback by the young man's temerity. "Who are you?" "My name is Asim. I'm a teacher of meditation and yoga. I've come to initiate you." Dr. Anukul was startled by his answer. "I see. Please come in and sit. Can I bring you something? Some tea or other refreshment?" "Actually, I have some pressing work waiting for me," Asim said, with an air of impatience. "I will initiate you, but then I must be going." "May I ask why you are so eager to initiate me? I haven't asked for initiation." "These are my guru's instructions." "Your guru?" Anukul asked, suddenly hopeful. "Yes, my guru. Oh yes, he told me you would have 4 questions that I would need to answer." Asim repeated the 4 questions Dr. Anukul had posed to Swami Svarupananda, along with the answers Baba had dictated. "What is your guru's name?" Dr. Anukul asked in amazement. When he heard the name, Shrii Shrii Anandamurti, his heart leapt, and he gave his silent thanks to the guru he had not yet seen. When Sambuddhananda arrived in Guwahati, he found that Paresh had indeed come down with malaria and was in bad shape. He called an immediate meeting of the local Margis and informed them of Baba's displeasure. Duly chastised, the Margis arranged for Paresh to be hospitalized and made a list of who would take turns remaining in the hospital with him. As soon as that was taken care of, Sambuddhananda set off for Karimganj, despite going nearly 2 days without sleep, having traveled from Jamalpur in the unreserved compartment. When the train reached Badarpur station, he got down and found the Barrack Valley Express standing on the opposite platform, just as Baba had said it would be. Hurriedly, he entered the train and quickly went from one end to the other and back again without finding his initiate. Finally, on the 3rd pass, he heard a familiar voice call out to him, "Dada, what are you doing here?" "Anukulda, there you are. Come on, get down from the train. You have to come with me to Karimganj, right this moment." "Karimganj? What are you talking about? I have some important work to take care of. I can't go to Karimganj now." "Don't argue with me. I'll answer your questions later. Right now, we have to get off this train and get on the train for Karimganj. Where is your luggage?" When Dr. Anukul motioned toward his bag, Sambuddhananda grabbed it and summarily tossed it out onto the platform. He grabbed the uncomprehending doctor, and escorted him off the train, much to the latter's silent annoyance. Once they were safely on their way to Karimganj, Sambudananda related Baba's instructions to him. It wasn't much of an explanation, but the doctor realized that if Baba had given an order, it was best not to question it. The next morning, the daily papers supplied the reason. The train that Dr. Anukul had been on had suffered a derailment soon after leaving Badarpur station. It had fallen into a gorge, and a large number of passengers had been killed, including most of the people in his coach. On May 22nd, Baba gave his semi-annual RU address in Patna, a talk entitled Science, Civilization, and Spiritual Progress. The next day he gave his Ananda Purnima DMC address, and that morning in front of the gathering, he announced the formation of WWD, the Women's Welfare Department of Ananda Marga. Preparations for creating the women's wing were already underway, though they had not been without opposition from within the organization. Baba had been creating female acharyas since the founding of the organization, but up until that point, there had been no hint that he would create an order of female sannyasis. Earlier that year, however, Vimala Vishishta, then district secretary for Anandamarga in Bombay, had expressed to Baba her desire to dedicate herself to the mission, just as the Avadutas were doing. Baba then disclosed to her his plans for the creation of WWD and an order of female sannyasis. Vimala was 52 at the time, a well-educated, sophisticated, and talented woman from the upper circles of Bombay society, who had been married off at the age of 15 by her family to a wealthy and materialistic businessman. Her maturity, intelligence, and many talents made her the perfect person to become Baba's first female sannyasi and head of the women's wing. Vimala had been leading a spiritual life since her childhood. Once her 3 children were married and settled down, she left her home in Bombay and went to live in the Kerala ashram of her guru, Swami Ramdas, where she built a house. After Ramdas died in 1963, however, she felt the need for a living guru. With that in mind, she went to Rishikesh to meet Anandamayi Ma, who told her that there was no need for her to go anywhere to take initiation. Her guru would come to her, and very soon now. Trusting in the saint's words, she left Rishikesh for Udaipur to visit her daughter and son-in-law. While she was there, Mangal Bihari, a friend of the family, heard about her avid interest in spiritual matters and invited her to a spiritual gathering at his house. That night, Vimala had a dream in which she saw a sannyasi clothed in orange robes and a turban. Voices urged her to touch the sannyasi's feet. As she did, she saw the sannyasi turn into the figure of her departed guru, Swami Ramdas, smiling bounteously at her. Then the figure of Ramdas changed into that of an unknown man wearing eyeglasses and a white dhoti and kurta. With her hand still touching his feet, she heard a voice resounding all around her. "You are touching the divine light." Then she woke up. Her entire body was vibrated with feelings of bliss. It was already early morning, so she took a bath and got ready to go to Mangal Bihari's house. When she entered his house, she saw the same sannyasi she had seen in her dream, an Avaduta of Anandamarga. She took initiation, and later that day, Mangal Bihari showed her the letters that Tejkaran had written during his first visit to Jamalpur. Deeply inspired by the letters, she asked to see Baba's picture. As she suspected, it was the same person who had appeared to her in her dream. On Baba's instructions, Pranay called her to Varanasi in April to take training. In the first week of May, she arrived in Jamalpur to take her final Acharya classes and sit for the Acharya exam. Joining her was Acharya Kailas Bala's 19-year-old daughter Pramila, who had been pestering Baba for the past couple of years to allow her to dedicate herself full-time to the mission. Baba made his plans public in a meeting in his room with Satyananda, Pranay, and several others, while the two prospective female monks waited outside. A heated discussion ensued, loud enough for the two women to know that Baba's plans were not entirely well received. Satyananda, in particular, was strongly opposed to the idea. He tried to argue with Baba that one of the main factors that had led to the decline of Buddhism in India had been Buddha's controversial decision to create female sannyasis, but Baba would not hear of it. Like a bird, an organization needs two wings to be able to fly, he said, a comment he would often repeat in the future. Nor would he listen to any of the other traditional arguments against the inclusion of women voiced by the other men in the room. Vimala received her Avadutika initiation in October and was given the monastic name Anandamurti. Pramila received her initiation a few months later and was given the name Ananda Gita. Together, they set up the WWD headquarters in Varanasi and the training center for female whole-timers. On June 8th, 2 weeks after the Ananda Purnima DMC, Nara Singh, an elderly devotee from nearby Trimohan, came to Jamalpur to see Baba. When Baba reached the Jagrati in the late afternoon, Nara Singh informed the master that it was time for him to leave his body. Baba reached out and took his disciple's hand. Nara Singh, why are you talking like this? You should not think such thoughts. You can't cheat me, Baba, Nara Singh replied. I know that my time has come. Baba remained silent for a moment. Then he said softly, Do you want me to extend your life? No, Baba. I want your promise that I will be reborn into a family of Margis and become an Avaduta in my next life. How can I promise you that? It is my wish that you merge into the Supreme Consciousness when you leave this body and attain Mahamritu, the Great Death. Nara Singh would not be deterred. He continued to insist. Finally, Baba relented. Tatastu, he said, so be it. A few minutes later, Baba called two disciples into his room, Chiranjeevi and Karmeshwar Lal. He told them that Nara Singh was not well and asked them to accompany him back to his house in Trimohan that night. He also asked them to convey a message to Nara Singh's eldest son, Aniruddha, that he should not leave his father alone the next day. In the evening, when Baba went out for field walk, he asked Pranay why Nara Singh was not there. When Pranay explained that he had given his place to a South Indian Margi because he had come from such a long distance, Baba rebuked him. What? Go and bring Nara Singh immediately. I have urgent work with him. It was to be Nara Singh's last darshan and the culmination of an old story. Nara Singh had been a devout Hindu his entire life. When his eldest son, Aniruddha, took initiation in 1956, he was happy to see the unexpected change in his character, but he was equally disturbed to see him abandon idol worship and other traditions of his Hindu faith. This led to arguments between the two that were compounded when his second son, Harinder, took initiation shortly afterward, at the insistence of his brother. One day in mid-1957, while visiting Aniruddha in Bhagalpur, Nara Singh got into yet another argument with his eldest son over Anandamarga. This time, his son was uncompromising. You are a great devotee, I know, but now it is time for you to join Anandamarga. I will not join the religion of sinners, Nara Singh bellowed. But a week later, he came to Aniruddha in an apologetic mood and asked him who his acharya was. Unless you are ready to take initiation, I am not prepared to talk to you. Bring me to your acharya then. I am ready. Surprised at this unexpected and unexplained change of heart, Aniruddha brought his father to his acharya, Chandranath. During his initiation, Nara Singh went into trance and remained in that state for several hours. When he regained his normal consciousness, he lamented that he had come so late. He insisted on being brought to see Baba. They told him that new initiates were required to practice meditation for 6 months before they were allowed to meet the Guru, but Nara Singh would not be put off. Finally, after 5 days of entreaties, they brought him to Jamalpur. When Baba saw him for the first time, he said, "Nara Singh, you have come very late. I have been waiting for you for 3 years. Go and ask Mahadeva." 3 years ago I told him, "There is a great devotee in Trimohan by the name of Nara Singh. Go and bring him to me." But he didn't do it. That evening on field walk, Nara Singh told Baba that no son had ever repaid his debt to his father, but his son had done so. "No, Nara Singh," Baba said. "Aniruddha has done you a great service, no doubt. But that debt is not yet paid. Something more is left." A few days later, Nara Singh brought a basket of ripe mangoes from his orchard to offer to Baba. Baba scowled and scolded him. "Don't you know that Baba does not accept offerings from anyone?" That night, Nara Singh had a chance to talk to Baba alone at the gate of Baba's house after returning from field walk. "Baba, why did you scold me today?" he asked. "The orchard that I brought the mangoes from is your orchard. The mangoes are your mangoes." Baba smiled and invited him to sit on the veranda with him. Baba went inside the house and brought out 2 cups of tea. They sat and chatted for some time. Thereafter, Baba gave orders that any offerings from Nara Singh would be accepted, but from no one else. The story circulated among the Margis. From then on, he became known as Pera Baba because he never came to Baba empty-handed. He always brought some sweets, such as pera or some fruits. From that day until his death, Nara Singh would not miss a single DMC, prompting Baba to once remark, "No one has been present at every DMC except Nara Singh and myself." A few years later, Nara Singh asked Baba to teach him how to extend his lifespan. "Why do you want to learn that?" Baba inquired. "Baba, I am very old. I came very late to your mission. I want to be able to complete my sadhana properly, but I have very few years left." "This is possible, but it is not recommended. After a person passes 80 years of age, the glands lose their vitality, and sadhana becomes more difficult. Even asanas don't have much effect any longer. For this reason, Providence has decreed that a person's lifespan should not much exceed this age. It is better to take rebirth and start fresh with a new body. You will pick up your sadhana where you left off in the last life, but with a body that is young and strong. It is better this way." Nara Singh accepted Baba's advice and did not repeat his request. On another occasion, Baba told him, "If a person is very attached to his family, and if his family members are present when he dies, then it will become an obstacle for his spiritual advancement. It may even cause him to take rebirth in that same family." "Baba, then I want to die either in your presence or when I am alone." "Yes, it would be best that way." Now on this summer night in 1965, after what would be his last darshan, Nara Singh took the late train back to Bhagalpur, accompanied by the 2 Margis. When they reached Bhagalpur Junction in the early morning hours, he insisted on going the rest of the way to Trimohan by himself. Despite Baba's instructions, Chiranjeevi and Karmeshwar let him have his wish. They turned back for Jamalpur and thus did not have a chance to give Baba's message to Aniruddha. Nara Singh arrived home around 3:30 in the morning. He did his morning spiritual practices and then collapsed on his bed in a weakened state, while the ladies of the house did their best to take care of him. Later in the morning, Aniruddha stopped by. By this time, Nara Singh was feeling somewhat better. He told his son that he had an appointment in Bhagalpur and had to leave. Aniruddha did not want to let him go, but Narasimha insisted. He had given his word, he said. He had to go, and he wanted to go alone. Aniruddha tried to convince his father to allow him to send someone with him, but he eventually gave up. He dropped him off at the station, but afterward, he instructed his household servant, Safijan, to follow the old man secretly and keep an eye on him, just in case. Once in the station, Narasimha boarded the local train for Bhagalpur, which was standing empty on the platform. He found an upper berth in a vacant compartment and sat for meditation. 15 minutes later, he shouted in a loud voice, "Baba!" Safijan, who was keeping out of sight nearby, peeked in and saw Narasimha slumped against the wall of the compartment in meditation posture. Alarmed, he entered the compartment and found that Narasimha was dead. Narasimha's funeral rites were performed in Trimohan, according to the Anandamarga system, despite the virulent objections of the villagers. It was the first funeral ever conducted according to the system Baba had given in Charya. Though Baba did not attend, he sent a special message. His death was not Mrityu but Mahamritu. He is the only person in the organization who was chanting his Ista mantra continuously up until his last breath. On August 15th, the increasingly frequent skirmishes between India and Pakistan in the Kashmir region broke out into full-scale hostilities when the Indian Army crossed the international border into Pakistani Kashmir in response to what it termed as massive armed infiltration by Pakistani saboteurs into Indian Kashmir. Baba was on his way to the Jagrati when the news broke that the Indian Army had crossed the border. Though Pakistan claimed that the attack was unprovoked, Baba did not agree. He supported Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri's decision to go on the offensive. That evening, he gave the Margis a history lesson on the conflict and analyzed the mistakes made by Nehru, the previous Prime Minister, which had left India in a tenuous position along the Kashmir border. As he had done during the Chinese conflict, Baba kept up a running commentary on the war each day thereafter for the Margis. In the meantime, the upcoming 2-week DMC tour, scheduled for Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir, along with Agartala, Chandigarh, Jammu, and Simla, had to be altered. The Srinagar DMC was cancelled, and Jaipur was added to the program. Baba arrived in Agartala, the capital of Tripura, on the 19th, his second visit to the northeast that year. Samburananda, who was in charge of Prachar in the states of Assam and Tripura, brought him by car to the house where he would be staying. There he was met by Gopi Bala, the district secretary for Anandamarga in Agartala, and Baba's designated local guardian during the DMC. As per tradition, Gopi Bala garlanded Baba and received his namaskar. As they were walking into the house, Baba asked him how he was doing. "I am fine, Baba," he said. Baba stopped in the hallway. "I can see that you have gout in your knees. They give you a great deal of pain in the night, do they not?" Gopi Bala folded his hands to his chest and confirmed with a nod what Baba had said. Baba prescribed for him a diet to help him with his disease. Then he bent over and pressed both of Gopi Bala's knees with his hands. "Go now," he said. "It is all cured." Gopi Bala prostrated in front of Baba and protested, aghast that he had allowed Baba to reverse the Indian tradition of showing respect to one's elders by touching their feet. "Baba, why did you touch my legs?" "Your entire body is an expression of Brahma," Baba replied. While on field walk in Simla, Baba talked about Tantra and the special significance it held in Himachal Pradesh. Sadashiva lit the lamps of Tantra in each and every corner of this area, But nowadays, very few people in India have any real understanding of Tantra. Most of the available texts exist only in distorted form, and the original texts are very difficult to find. One of the few people who understand something about Tantra is the scholar Gopinath Kabiraj, a disciple of Anandamurti. Now you Anandamargis should revitalize Tantra in each and every part of Himachal Pradesh. The next day in Jammu, Baba continued his discussions on Tantra. He urged the local Margis to try to collect the ancient Tantric texts, many of which were in the possession of local pundits, though many others had been burned by Muslims. In his discourse, he gave a long account of the history of Kashmir, detailing the origins of its name and pointing out that due to certain philosophical confusion, the Indian people had developed an apathy toward history. As a result, much valuable historical information had been lost or was never recorded. He also talked about the war raging not far away and told the Margis that Kashmir's future was very dark. Great struggles lie ahead, he said. In the meantime, you should make every effort to preserve Kashmir's culture. If not, many things will be lost. While on field walk, he told the Margis that there would come a time when Pakistan would cease to exist. First, East Pakistan will separate from Pakistan and become an independent country. Eventually, both Pakistan and this new country will once again become part of India. Thus, both Bengals, both Kashmirs, and both Punjabs will be reunited, and the name Pakistan will be forgotten by all but students of history. After Baba returned to Jamalpur, he continued his analysis of the war on field walk and in the Jagriti. As the Indian army was losing ground in Kashmir, Baba told the Margis that if the army would attack near the Ichogil Canal, it would divert Pakistan's attention toward the defense of Lahore. 2 days later, on September 6th, the Indian army did exactly that, crossing the canal near the village of Barki. Within a short time, they came within range of the Lahore airport, which forced the U.S. to request a temporary ceasefire to allow it to evacuate its citizens. The battle in the Lahore sector raged until the UN mandated a ceasefire on the 22nd. Afterward, Baba praised the actions of the Prime Minister, not only the astuteness of his strategy, but more importantly, the fact that he was a moral man who acted with moral courage. Lal Bahadur Shastri died less than 4 months later, on January 11th. Baba asked Vijayananda to prepare a condolence message to be printed in the organization's magazines. The draft he showed to Baba for his approval contained the following sentence: Mr. Lal Bahadur Shastri, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, died in harness. After a few moments' pause, Baba told Vijayananda, "My philosophy is a little different. It is certainly laudable to die while working. In philosophical parlance, this is called karma sadhana. But it is even better to work while dying. This is called karma yoga. I want people to follow the path of karma yoga, not karma sadhana. It is good to die while working. It is better to work while dying," was a phrase that would be oft repeated by Baba in the years to come. It would, for many of his disciples, sum up the spirit of their missionary endeavors. In 1966, Baba's pace became even more hectic. He spent more time away from the office, giving 39 DMCs during the calendar year, and continued to increase the pressure on the whole-timers and Margis for social service projects and prachar. By now, this pressure was becoming a fundamental characteristic of the guru-disciple relationship. The carefree beginnings of Ananda Marga, when the entire office fit in a shopping bag, dangling from the handle of Pranay's bicycle, had become a thing of the past, and often the older disciples would wax nostalgic about the early days. For the young monks, raised in an atmosphere of dedication to an idealistic mission. Baba's pressure to materialize his plans and programs was as natural as the air they breathed. But for some of the older disciples, it was a difficult adjustment. Some were not able to keep pace, among them Pranay. By the end of 1964, the pressures of being the General Secretary, directly responsible to Baba for the growth of the mission, had taken its toll on Pranay. He had already begun to think seriously about leaving the organization, a thought that had first entered his mind the previous year when he saw the leadership of the mission gradually passing to the sannyasis, leaving him uncertain about his own place in the organization. Life in Anandanagar was like a microcosm of Anandamarga's growth elsewhere in India. In only a couple of years, the project had grown to include a primary school, high school, degree college, technical college, hospital, children's home, students' home, invalids' home, leper asylum, academy for the handicapped, printing press, the central offices of Anandamarga, and extensive agricultural projects. Living conditions, however, were still difficult. Nearly every day, it seemed, Baba was adding to the projects he wanted established and the programs he wanted carried out. He wanted regular progress reports on everything. And even when some of his programs seemed beyond the disciples' capacity to materialize them, no one would dare to tell him that they couldn't be done. Financial shortfalls were a daily reality, but the dire lack of funds was not an excuse that Baba was willing to entertain. Furthermore, Pranay had to deal with constant complaints and pressure from parents whose young sons or daughters had left home to become Anandamarga monks and nuns. In some cases, he advised trainees to return to their parents or discouraged candidates from going to the whole-timer training center, actions which brought him into conflict with Satyananda. For Pranay, all of this had become a source of increasing anxiety and stress. It would, however, take Pranay more than a year to follow through on what was for him a very painful decision. In late January 1966, Baba sent word to Anandanagar for Pranay to transfer Sarveshwarananda, then a teacher in the technical college, to Orissa with instructions to start a school there, and for Pranay to make arrangements for another teacher to take his place. This set Pranay off. He had already been at odds with some of Baba's decisions. This one seemed to have no logic behind it. Why transfer his only available Bengali-speaking teacher in the technical college and send him to a part of Orissa where there were no Margis to support him, where he didn't even speak the local language, and ask him to start a school? Pranay sat down and wrote a long letter to Baba in which he complained that he was giving them voluminous works to carry out with no money in their coffers and creating even more difficulties with such transfers. "You are the Guru and the President," he wrote, "but I am the General Secretary. As the General Secretary, I am countermanding this order." When Baba received the letter in Jamalpur, he declared that he was relieving Pranay of his post as General Secretary and posting Prashantananda in his place, a young monk still in his mid-20s. He called 4 acharyas, including the stalwart ex-policeman Kedarnath Sharma, and sent them to Anandanagar to relieve Pranay of his duties and accompany him back to Jamalpur. When the 4 acharyas arrived in Anandanagar with news of Baba's decision, it sent shockwaves throughout the rapidly growing settlement. It was a natural reaction. Pranay was the first Margi and the only General Secretary they had ever known. But everyone knew that Baba was implacable in matters of organizational discipline. Pranay dutifully handed over the accounts and other records to Prashantananda and went to the station with the 4 acharyas, accompanied by the rest of the Margis and whole-timers from Anandanagar, some of them crying openly. Pranay told them not to cry. "I am not leaving Anandamurti," he said. He wanted me to work for this length of time, and now it is finished. Now it is your turn to work for Anandamarga and establish Baba's mission." Instead of going straight to Jamalpur, as Baba had ordered, Pranay broke his journey in Kullu, where they were to change trains. He spent a day there at a friend's house to prepare himself for his encounter with Baba. Pranay reached Jamalpur the following evening, walked to Baba's house, and knocked on his door. When Baba opened the door, Pranay told him that he was leaving the organization and handed him the diaries in which he had handwritten Baba's instructions for performing the various lessons of Vishesh Yoga and Kapaliksarana. Baba accepted the diaries and gave Pranay his namaskar, but other than that, he remained silent. It was the last time that disciple and master would meet face to face. In the months that followed, Pranay would go half mad and complain that he was seeing Baba wherever he looked. Baba asked Chandranath and others to take care of him. Slowly he regained his mental balance, but he would remain estranged from the organization until after Baba's death, though he remained devoted to Baba as his guru and continued to perform his spiritual practices with strict regularity. In January 1965, at the RDMC, Dr. Ramesh and Shashi Ranjan went on field walk with Baba near the aerodrome. During that walk, Baba stopped and pointed to an irregular mosaic of cracks in the earth. After explaining how these cracks were different from the usual summer cracks, he said, "Such a pattern of cracks presages the imminent possibility of a severe famine. If the shortage of water continues for 1 or 2 more years, then this famine is sure to occur." A year and a half later, a terrible famine broke out in southern Bihar due to a prolonged drought. As news of the famine began to circulate, Dr. Ramesh and Shashi Ranjan, both working for the relief section of Eraz, came to Jamalpur and requested Baba's PA, Abhedananda, for permission to go on field walk. As soon as Baba came out of his house, he started speaking about the drought. "Those of you who wish to serve humanity now have your chance. I would like you all to cooperate in this effort and form a committee to help you carry out your plans." As they walked toward the tiger's grave, he discussed with them how to get the work off the ground. Ramesh asked him what they should name the committee. "In Anandamarga," Baba said, "we should not name anything after individuals. In our organization, everything should carry the name Anandamarga. In the future, you shouldn't need to ask such a question." They discussed it for a few minutes and then named it the Anandamarga Drought Relief Committee. Baba instructed them to find out which areas were most badly affected, especially those that were not receiving relief aid from the government or other agencies, and to start working in those areas as soon as possible. When Dr. Ramesh suggested that they should first collect sufficient funds, at least a few 100,000 rupees, along with supplies like food and clothes, Baba said that is precisely what you should not do. First start the relief work. Money and supplies will follow. Send a team to the worst affected areas without any delay. You should be the first to arrive. After receiving instructions from Baba on everything from how to collect materials and funds to how to organize and carry out their field work, Dr. Ramesh returned to Ranchi and started putting together his relief team. Shashi Ranjan set up a relief office in Patna to administer the fundraising efforts, and Acharya Sarangi, the government's subdivisional officer for Aurangabad, arranged jeeps for the volunteers. The first volunteers were 6 young Margi students from the Birla Institute of Technology and Science in Pilani, Rajasthan. Among them, Mangal Bihari's eldest son, Ananda, who arrived unannounced with over 8,000 rupees and bundles of clothes. As soon as they heard of the drought, they started collecting money and supplies from the public. But rather than hand over what they had collected to some relief agency, They had decided to take it to Bihar and distribute it themselves. Dr. Ramesh sent them to the Nawada area of Gaya district, an extremely poor area that was one of the hardest hit by the famine. What they found when they arrived was more shocking than they had imagined. The government had yet to begin relief efforts there, and local officials were at a loss what to do. Everywhere the boys looked, the ground was rent with fissures up to a foot deep and several inches wide. The land looked as if it had been scorched by fire. Not a single patch of green was visible in any direction. They loaded their jeeps with corn, the cheapest grain available on the market, and started going village to village, door to door, covering more than 50 remote villages in several days. Most of the people they met had not eaten for many days. Many of them had not even seen food for days. The people were so poor that the boys rarely saw a cooking pot or a metal utensil, only some simple earthen vessels, nor did anyone even have salt in their house. It pained them to see how the villagers would scramble on the ground if a few grains of corn fell out of their jeep. Money started pouring in from Margis all over the country, and numerous volunteers arrived. Dr. Ramesh formed them into teams and sent them to nearby blocks. Baba sent a message to all the volunteers. Do not forget that the quantity of materials you bring does not matter as much as the solace the people feel from seeing you come to their aid. Even people who would have died otherwise can be saved by the happiness and satisfaction they feel when they see you. When Dr. Ramesh went to Jamalpur to give his report and handed to Baba a bank statement for the account that he had set up for the relief work, Baba's mood turned grave. I have not established this relief committee for depositing funds in a bank account. Remember, if even a single person starves to death in your jurisdiction, and there is even a single rupee in that bank account, then you will be held responsible. After that, whatever funds or materials they received were immediately forwarded to the respective relief centers. Baba also insisted that they conduct regular audits of the accounts. A copy of the audited statements was to be sent to all donors, and if a donor specified that the donation should be used for a certain purpose, then a separate statement was to be sent to that person showing how their donation was utilized. The relief efforts quickly expanded to cover all the affected areas of Bihar. Committee members started attending meetings of the government's Bihar Relief Committee, chaired by Jaya Prakash Narayana, which had been established to coordinate the work of the different relief agencies. Jaya Prakash was so impressed by the Margi's efforts that he started taking the report of the Anandamarga Committee first. He also helped them to secure government funding. In one meeting, he said that his workers went out for relief, worked shabbily dressed, and came back with new clothes and new watches, but this never happened with the Margis. He also singled out Sarangi for praise for his efforts coordinating the work in the Aurangabad area, and said that what the government workers did with 12 rupees, the Margis did with 4. These remarks received considerable press in Delhi and Patna, and helped greatly to buoy the fundraising efforts. The relief efforts continued into 1967, and Baba continued to add new programs. The next was free kitchens, which were set up all over Bihar, then cheap kitchens. He created a program for building dams, wells, reservoirs, and access roads. Part of the emphasis on solving the water crisis, all under the banner of Work for Food. These programs became very popular in the villages. They gave the local people a sense that it was by the sweat of their own labor that they were overcoming the crisis. These programs were soon copied by other aid agencies. During the Ananda Purnima DMC in May 1966, Baba announced that for the first time, an Avaduta, Atmananda, had been posted overseas to Kenya. He explained that he had chosen Africa because it was the most exploited and neglected continent, and thus the place where Anandamarga was most needed. In July, Baba went on a DMC tour to western and northern India. In Kota, he held a ladies' meeting, during which Savita asked, "Baba, why don't you give individual PC to ladies? We have also heard that you keep a stick that you use in PC to give punishment." Baba smiled. "Do you want to see the stick?" Baba pulled it out from underneath his pillow and showed it to them. "Why do you want to have PC like the men? Don't ladies already get enough trouble from their husbands and their fathers? That's why I give them PC, so they can get what's coming to them." In the evening, the Margis gathered on the roof of the house where Baba was staying and sang devotional songs. The devotional mood became so intense that Baba called everyone to come closer, and they started jumping on him, trying to embrace him, men, women, and children. When the whole-timers tried unsuccessfully to restrain them, he said, "Let them be. This is the land of Mira, and I am in the mood of Mira." The next day, Baba did a demonstration he would repeat often in the coming years, with different variations. After talking about the roles the glands play in differentiating one type of bodily structure from another, he called an avaduta to the front, touched him with his stick, and said that his glands were now being converted into those of a monkey. The avaduta started grunting and jumping up and down frenetically. While he was doing so, Baba told the astonished Margis that if he left him in that state for 6 hours, he would start to grow monkey hair and show other structural changes. Baba touched him again, and his strange behavior ceased. Then he asked someone to give him a cup of warm milk. From Kota, Baba went to Delhi by train. The next morning, he boarded a plane for Patna, along with Kshitij and Astana. During the stopover in Varanasi, it was announced that the plane had mechanical problems and was delayed indefinitely. Baba asked Kshitij to see about arranging a car to Patna, a 5 to 6 hour ride. Kshitij suggested that there might be another flight available, and with a nod from Baba he went to check. In the meantime, Astana took Baba to the waiting room where the local Margis had gathered to receive him during his stopover. While Baba was chatting with the Margis and enjoying the devotional songs, Kshitij returned and informed him that there was another flight, but the airline could not guarantee when it would leave. "Don't waste any more time," Baba told him. "I have to give evening general darshan in Patna. Arrange for the car immediately." Kshitij hired a private taxi and packed the food that the Margis had brought for Baba. When everything was ready, he informed Baba. "Are you sure the driver knows the way?" Baba asked. Kshitij assured him that he did, and they set off. As they were leaving the outskirts of Varanasi, they encountered a detour. Despite Kshitij's previous assurances, neither he nor the driver was sure they were on the right road. Kshitij asked the driver to stop for a moment so he could get out and ask someone for directions. When he returned with confirmation that they were on the right road, Baba pointed out that he had not thanked the person who gave him directions. Kshitij apologized to Baba, and they set off again. Sometime later, they met with another detour. Again Kshitij got out to verify the directions, and again Baba brought it to his attention that he had forgotten to thank the person. When they reached the Arapatna turning, they came to an unmarked fork in the road. Kshitij started to get out to ask for directions, but Baba stopped him. "Twice you've asked for directions, and twice you've neglected to show the common courtesy of saying thank you to the person who helped you. This time, I will ask for directions myself." Baba told the driver to pull up to the curb where an old man was sitting. He asked him in Bhojpuri if this was the way to Patna. The old man jumped to his feet, holding a garland in his hands. "Yes, Baba, this is the way to Patna." He placed a garland around Baba's neck. Baba patted the old man affectionately on the cheek, asked him how he was doing, and gave him his blessing. Now you should go and eat something. You haven't eaten all day. Yes, Baba. Had you not come, I would have been here until night, without eating anything. I knew you would come. I've been waiting here to give you this garland. Once they were back in the car, Baba told his curious disciples that the old man's name was Sarju Pahari, a Bhojpuri-speaking Margi from a village in Ara district. He is a good devotee, but he is very poor. For this reason, he has found it very difficult to attend darshan. He had a dream that I would be passing this way by car on my way from Varanasi, so he left his house early this morning and walked several hours to reach this place. He did not want to take food before he saw me. By this time, Kshitij was annoyed that Baba had put his physical body to so much trouble just to take this man's garland. As they were heading out of Ara, Astana smiled and said softly to Baba, "Baba, you did all this just to grace this old man." "It's okay," Baba replied. Though it was late in the afternoon, Baba still had not eaten. In the end, they arrived in Patna just in time for the scheduled program. Baba's packed lunch went unopened. In the second week of September, Baba left Jamalpur for a DMC tour that took him to 7 different cities in different parts of India. Before leaving for the tour, Baba informed the Margis and workers in Gujarat that the DMC in Surat would be cancelled unless the school that he had earlier asked them to open was up and running by the time he reached there. With less than a month remaining before his visit, Baba's ultimatum provided the necessary impetus for the local Margis to find a building and open the school. Baba arrived in Surat on the 26th and was brought to the house of Kanchanlal Seth, a multi-millionaire businessman who had recently taken initiation. Kanchanlal's house was a spacious 3-story mansion located in an upper-class neighborhood. In preparation for Baba's 3-day stay, he had recarpeted the entire first floor with white velvet carpets. By the time Baba arrived, the house was full of Margis and old-timers who had gathered to receive him. The moment Baba sat down on the bed in his room, however, he started acting uncomfortable. "Where have you brought me?" he asked. "What kind of a place is this? Who has arranged for me to stay here? Call the district secretary. I cannot stay in this place." Acharya Keshavananda offered Baba some water, but he refused to drink it. "I do not want to take even a single drop of water in this place. Turn off the fan. I don't want to use even a single penny of electricity from this house." Everyone was stunned. Lakshmi Chandananda, who had accompanied Baba on the train from Bombay, tried to placate him. "Baba, it is much too hot in this room without a fan. It's nearly 40 degrees. But Baba would not relent. Then Lakshmi Chand brought out a thermos of Musambi juice and offered to pour him a glass. "Baba, this is not from this house. I brought it with me from Bombay." "I cannot drink it here," Baba said. "Save it for me." Keshavananda went out to talk to the Margis and explain the situation. Vijay Jani immediately offered his house for Baba to stay. When Keshavananda brought him to Baba, Baba asked, "My son, do you have a little room in your house where your Baba can stay?" "Baba, my house is very simple," he replied. "But it is yours. The Dadas thought it would be better if you stayed here." "I would much rather stay in a simple person's house." Vijay and Sambudhananda rushed over to Jani's house to prepare a room for Baba, though there was little they could do other than put a clean sheet over the bed and set up a partition. Once they brought Baba there, however, he was happy. An old lady, who had tried to offer him something to drink at Kanchanlal's house, offered him a glass of water. This time he accepted, draining the glass in one go. Shankarananda started massaging Baba's hand, and Baba said to him, "Look, before taking food in someone's house, you should inquire what sort of food it is, whether it is worthy to be eaten or not. And if it is not worthy to be eaten, then a spiritual monk should starve rather than eat that food. But I have made householders exempt from this rule. If they are in danger of starvation, then they can eat it in order to survive." Baba remained in Johnny's house for the next 3 days and gave darshan in the nearby Regional Institute of Technology, where Johnny was the principal. In the meantime, Kanchanlal made repeated requests to meet Baba, but the Dadas would not let him. The next day, while giving PC at the school, Baba asked the unit secretary, Mahendra Bhai Joshi, how Kanchanlal was doing. "Baba, he is very distraught that you refused to stay in his house." "What could I do? I am bound by the laws of Dharma." When he left Baba's room, Mahendra phoned Kanchanlal and informed him that Baba had been asking about him. Kanchanlal started for Johnny's residence and was stopped at the gate by Madhavananda, who refused to let him in. When Kanchanlal told him that Baba was calling for him, Madhavananda went to check with Baba. This time, Baba softened his stance. "I have not called for him, but you can send him in once I have finished giving PC." When Kanchanlal entered the room, he did full prostration and knelt in front of Baba's cot with his hands folded to his chest. "Do you do your sadhana twice a day?" Baba asked. Kanchanlal remained silent. "You don't, do you?" Baba asked. Kanchanlal nodded in agreement. "Do you follow the principles of yama and niyama?" Once again he remained silent. "The answer is no," Baba said, and again Kanchanlal agreed. "Do you realize that you have accumulated your wealth by exploiting thousands of innocent people?" "Yes, Baba," he replied. His head bowed. "Was that not wrong of you?" "Yes, Baba." "If I stay in your house, will people not say that Baba supports this sin?" "Yes, Baba." "Do you want Baba to be blamed for that?" "No, Baba." "Whatever may be, you are my son. I want you to take an oath that you will not perform any more dishonest deeds and that you will try your best to follow yama and niyama from now on. Do this, and then I will come to your house." Kanchanlal gave his promise and left Baba's room with a lightened heart. But afterward, Baba said to Sambuddhananda, "The man will never change his habits, because if he did, he would lose his wealth. So I will never be able to stay in his house." After Surat, Baba went to Bombay for the final DMC of the tour, and from there back to Jamalpur. It was the end of one era and the beginning of another. Anandamarga had begun as a small circle of devotees gathered around a spiritual master who hid his greatness behind the unassuming guise of a simple railway clerk in a small Indian town. The circle continued to widen, soon at a dizzying pace that even his disciples found difficult to comprehend. Along the way, the character of their lives began to change as they imbibed the teachings of their guru that theirs should be a pauseless struggle against injustice and exploitation, a continuous effort for the upliftment and enlightenment of society in all arenas of human endeavor. They watched him as he built an organization and became the sternest of taskmasters, directing that organization like a driver tugging at the reins of a team of horses and urging it toward an ideal that seemed beyond their reach, if not for his assurances that their efforts would one day be crowned with victory. All that was left now to bring this era to a close was his departure from Jamalpur, an eventuality that could no longer be delayed.